Hot Yoga's Half Moon and Hands to Feet pose. This is a wonderful combination of two postures that Bikram put in the beginning of the sequence. I do it a little bit later on, but still as a warm-up. And this is the next video in a series where we can intellectually discuss how you can get deeper into this pose. We're going to go in and out of the studio so you can get a better intellectual understanding how to get the most out of these two amazing warm-up positions. Now, I'm very specific when I say Hot Yoga's Half Moon pose, because other styles of yoga, they have a completely different pose that they call Half Moon. This particular pose that Vishnu Ghosh calls Half Moon was influenced by a gentleman named J.P. Mueller, who published a book called My System back in 1914. Here's a picture of him doing this particular side body stretch, and that's why he created it for a side body stretch. So then Vishnu Ghosh then incorporated it into a standing yogic asana. Definitely not one of the original 84 poses. This came much later on in the last 100 years. But being super conscious of alignment is key. I always talk about it. It's the key that unlocks the door. The tumblers must fit in perfectly in order to get the desired release. So if you're in the position where you're a little bit off here, you're a little bit off there, first of all, you may be hurting yourself. But second, you also may be stopping yourself from going further into the position based on your body's position. So we're going to talk about alignment. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the way you're standing. But before I give you the next tip, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. You get notified when I post a new video. If you're enjoying this video, hit the like button. If you want to learn all about hot yoga, tutorials, flows, factoids, hit the like button and the subscribe button right now. So now we're just not going to stand there. We're going to lift our toes and spread them. Here we are with Barkan senior teacher Elena. Place them onto the ground, the four corners evenly distribute. The inner thighs rotate in and the tailbone scoops. She brings her arms overhead, interlaces her fingers, and now she's going to go side to side. And as she goes side to side, she's extending up and over, not just side to side, but up and over. Here she goes the other direction. Side to side. This is a great warm-up to start the position. Now let's talk about the grip. This is the grip that everyone knows and loves. Interlaced fingers, index finger released, thumbs are crossed. But this wasn't the original grip. The grip that Bikram brought to the United States back in the mid-70s was a flat hand grip. You're still crossing your thumbs, flat hands. Much harder position to do. So let's go back to the studio with Elena. Here she is, arms overhead. She has the interlaced finger grip. Now she's got the hands flat grip. Now Vishnu Ghosh created a grip where you bring your hands out to the side, and I enhance that grip by grabbing the wrist. So when you grab the wrist, you can see Elena as she goes over to the side, she's extending her entire side body by pushing up into the wrist with the bottom hand. Now, Elena and I are going to go back to the studio and talk about three opposite directions that you want to think about, because opposite directions is one of the main concepts, the main mechanics, if you will, of the yogic asana. So let's head over to the studio with me and Elena, and I'm going to illustrate and demonstrate these three opposite directions.
There are three main opposite directions for side half moon. So arms overhead, interlaced fingers. As she reaches over to the side, her hips are going this direction. So her arms are reaching right, her hips are going left. Here's an opposite direction that we have to get you into your side body. Second opposite direction, the chest comes out and the arms come back. See how her arms are coming back as the chest comes forward. As a teacher, one of my assists that I do, I take my thumb in the middle of her spine and I push forward as her arms come back to get that opposite direction. I'm going to have Elena come up and do the other side. So as she goes to this side, here's the third opposite direction a lot of people don't think about. It's the right hip to the right heel pushing down and the right hip all the way up that right side body. So this opposite direction is happening. So what she's got to do is push down into this foot, push into the outside foot to create the extension of her side body. That's the third opposite direction.
Welcome back to my home. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make as I travel the world and watch people do this pose is they try to go over so far that they actually end up crunching the body. So let's watch Elena. She's going to reach up and over, and as she goes further, look how her shoulder comes forward. She's crunching down into the side of body that we don't want to crunch. We want to lift up and over. We want the top shoulder to go back more, the chest to open up, just like we did it in the opposite direction demonstration. And now you can see her go to the other side. You can see the extension that she has. We don't want to crunch into the side. We want to lift up and over. So now you can go over as far as you want, as long as you don't compromise the alignment. Here's the big mistake. People compromise alignment to go what they think is further into the pose. And as soon as you're out of alignment, you're out of the pose. Don't compromise alignment. Stay in the proper alignment. Here's something I talk about all the time in this position. You want to maintain the symmetry. When you bring your arms overhead and you're interlacing your fingers over your head, you want to maintain that your head is right in between your arms, like I'm demonstrating now, when you go to the side. When you go to the side, chin is up, your head and arms are in the exact same position. You don't want to look up to the ceiling. You definitely don't want to look down to the floor. You want to look straight ahead. You'll be able to see your throat in the mirror, head's right in the center, from the standing position over to the right, over to the left. Keep the symmetry the whole time. That's how you can tell and make your own corrections while you're doing your own practice. Because sometimes the teacher may not correct you. You want to listen to what I'm saying and make your own corrections. Now, if you want me to correct you personally, come to my class in Fort Lauderdale. I teach at Prana Hot Yoga. I'll put the link down in the description below. Or you can join the Barkan Method online teacher training course. Send yourself videos to me and I can give you direct personal coaching. So now let's go to the back bends. Because half moon is really to the right and to the left. In fact, when Bikram first came to the United States, he called in Sanskrit pars Ardha Chandrasana. Ardha is half, Chandra moon, asana pose. So Ardha Chandrasana is half moon. But pars Ardha Chandrasana is side half moon. The back bend is really Ardha Chandrasana, just by itself. So now let's look at the back bend. Back into the studio with Elena. If you happen to have a neck issue, I've got this question a lot of times over the years, don't let your head drop all the way back. Keep your ears glued to your arms the whole time. So watch Elena as she goes into her back bend. Her head doesn't go back. She's going to maintain contact with her ears to her biceps. And now she's protecting her neck and getting a nice back bend as a result. Good modification to use. Now, if you don't have a neck issue, relax the neck, let the head fall all the way back. First thing you want to do is lift your chest to the ceiling, and then you're going to reach back. Now, you don't want to push your hips too far forward past the knees. I talked about that in this video. Check that out after you watch this one. And as you go down, you can watch Elena. She's incorrectly bending her elbows, because one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they bend their elbows. They think they're going further, but it's an illusion. Their arms are going further, the back isn't really bending. And by bending the elbows, pushing the hips forward, you're going to create an irritation in the sacrum and the lower back. Not a good thing. So now we're watching Elena do it properly. She lifts up and her arms are straight and she continues to go back. She pushes her hips forward, and that's also another opposite direction. Not too far forward to compromise the sacrum. And now you can see what a wonderful back bend she's got creating. Her arms are nice and straight and she reaches back and back and back. And here's a great tip that you can use pretty much in every pose, but in the back bend especially. When you're in your back bend position and you're reaching back for a spot behind you, Bikram would say, look for a spot behind you and touch it with your fingers. And I say, give yourself a tangible goal. So if you're reaching back and you see a spot on the wall with your hands, reach back for 2 inches below that point and touch that position. 2 inches below that point, tangible goal. 2 inches below that point. Now you have 1 or, let's say 3 or 4 centimeters if you're outside the United States. You give yourself that tangible goal as opposed to just trying to go back and just crunch back. But if you give yourself 1 or 2 inches or a couple centimeters, that's going to be a lot easier for your brain to register. Now you can go back a lot further, giving yourself 1 step at a time, tangible goal. Part 2 to this particular video is now hands the feet pose, the next position. Remember, this is a combination of half moon and hands the feet. You never want to finish on a back bend. That's why we come forward down into hands to feet pose. Pada is feet or legs. Hasta is hand, Padahastasana, hands to feet pose. Now, ideally, you want to come back with a straight back and straight legs, but a lot of people aren't able to do that, especially the average person, and especially if you have any kind of a back issue. So what you can do to modify, watch Elena, you can bend your knees, still go down with a flat back, still go down with straight arms, and you come up the same way. Straight up, but your knees are bent, and eventually you straighten your legs. Another extreme modification, watching Elena again, is you place your hands onto your thighs. One hand to the floor, then the other. You're going to come up the same way. Hands to your thighs, one at a time. And now you've got complete support for your lower back. You're not going to compromise or irritate the sacrum. It's a great way, it's a great modification to use, especially if you are injured. So let's give an example of the average student. Somebody that's not extremely flexible in their hamstrings may have to bend the knees a little bit. So back to the studio with Elaine. As she comes down, she bends her knees a little bit, touches the floor, and then she shakes out her hips left and right. She can do a little squat, take the pressure off the lower back. Now she brings her fingers underneath the heels. The arms are going to come around the backs of the calf muscles. You don't want to touch them, but that's the feeling you want to have. You want to create that the elbows are coming around the backs of the calf muscles. You have stomach on your thighs, chest to the knees, and then a little bit later, the face presses down into the shins. So as the face presses into the shins, the hips are moving forward to the front. In hot yoga, we use mirrors, so to the front mirror. So your hips are going forward, your face is pressing into the shins, you're getting a nice stretch in the lower back and the hamstring, and then you're going to come up the same way you went down, maybe bend the knees a little bit, up you go, and now you're out of the pose. Remember, give yourself that tangible goal. Where's the next inch? Where's the next 2 centimeters? You don't want to be pushing too far because you could hurt yourself. Especially in this position, you can be careful, not just of the hamstrings, but the front of the hips or the hip flexors. One time I was pushing it too much and I heard my hip flexor pop. So you got to be careful not to push too much. That's one of the reasons why we use heat. So that'll help protect the body. Now at the advanced level, you're going to come down with straight back and straight arms. And now you're no longer bringing the fingers underneath the heels. We're going to go into the studio one more time. But before we do that, I want to explain something to you. We never brought the fingers underneath the heels in the old days. It was always the advanced grip, cupping the heels from the back. Somewhere in the 80s, Bikram said, bring your fingers underneath the heels for those who have really tight hamstrings. And it's a great modification. But it's definitely a position that you don't want to do if you're advanced. If your legs are straight in hands to feet pose, you should not bring your fingers under the heels. Now you're shortening the hamstring. Emmy Cleaves used to talk about it all the time, who was another one of Bikram's most senior teachers and taught me the advanced class. We both would teach the same thing. If you're advanced, you're cupping from the back of the heels. Let's go into the studio with Elena and demonstrate this point.
And now when your legs are straight, you no longer want to bring your fingers underneath the heels. So arms overhead, Elena comes down to her hands to feet pose. And now, because her legs are flexible, her hamstrings especially, she's going to cup the heels from the back. So let me show you what this looks like. If I bring her hand out like this, you can see she's fingers are not underneath the heels anymore because then she's tightening the hamstrings. The hands come around the backs of the heels. Stomach on the thighs, chest to the knees, and now the chin comes up just a little bit because it still touches the shins. And now her head's coming to the floor and her shoulders are coming up to the ceiling. The shoulders are up, the head and neck are down, the weight comes forward, and she brings her arms overhead and comes up the same way she went down. That's the advanced version of hands to feet pose or Padahastasana.
And here's a fun little clip I want to show from you that was recorded back in the mid-80s. I was on television about 10 or 15 times, bringing in different doctors, talking about, demonstrating how wonderful yoga is. I brought Bikram a few times. So Rajashri and I are demonstrating. She's doing the back bend. I'm doing hands to feet pose. You can see her palms are together. That was the grip that we used in the old days. Remember, we didn't interlace our fingers. But watch how I come down in this position. No extra movement. Right for the heels. I'm not shaking. I'm not bending my knees. I'm not pedaling it out. I'm not squatting. I'm going right down to my heels and right back up at the same time. Because here's your mantra as you get more advanced. No extra movement. Economy of motion. Point A to point B. So half moon and hands to feet pose. When you have a better understanding of alignment, which is true for every single posture that we do and any type of yoga that you do, you have an intellectual understanding of where you need to be in your body. That's going to unlock your practice. When you have it, like that key that opens up the tumblers, you want to be super conscious of your position and alignment and take it to the next level. So that's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button. You want to learn all about hot yoga, tutorials, flows, factoids, hit the like button and the subscribe button right now, and I'll see you the next video. Bye everyone.